So, not too long ago, in my job as a security software engineer, one of the things I had to do with the SOC and the data analytics and response team was that they needed a way to test out, detonate, break down, and analyze malware. I built them a platform, not quite unlike this, to do it. And it involves a virtual machine running Windows that they can install software on and detonate malware, as well as a way to connect to it. I thought for my own research, I would like to do something similar for me, and so I'll take you guys and girls along the ride. So, we need two virtual machines, one for Windows, and on that we're going to install this thing called Flare VM. Now, if you haven't heard of Flare VM, it is basically a collection of software installation scripts for Windows that allows you to set up, maintain, and work with reverse engineering tools and all the likes. So it's essentially a PowerShell script that you can run that installs it all for you. So that's the other one. Well, that's one side of it. The other side is Chasm Workspaces. So Chasm Workspaces is a platform that allows you to stream containerized desktop and applications directly from your web browser. This gives you out-of-the-box access of Linux environments or individual apps without installing anything. What we're going to do is use this to interface with virtual machines. So this was originally designed for isolated Docker environments for sandboxing different applications. However, we can also use this to connect to virtual machines. So to start with, we're going to create a new resource. So I am in an empty Azure tenant. I've got nothing on this. It's running the lowest subscription level thing you could ever want. So hopefully this allows you to follow on at home if you would like to. So we're gonna call our resource group detonation, call it whatever you want. And the first virtual machine we're going to spin up is going to be the Flare VM virtual machine, which is Windows. You pick a region closest to you. I am in the southern hemisphere, so Australia East is the closest data center to me, so I will pick that. Availability zones and all that sort of stuff don't really matter because all of this is going to be ephemeral architecture. And so what that means is we're going to be able to spin up and tear down these virtual machines on demand. Now for both of these VMs, we're going to require the standard security type. Trusted launch virtual machines don't work because the TPM module interferes with some of the tools that we need. As for the size, we are going to pick D4. So this is 4 vCPUs and 16 gigs of memory. That seems to work pretty well for me. If you want to spend less money, you could probably go down to 2 vCPUs, but up to you. The username, put your own username in there, and your password. For inbound port rules, we are going to allow RDP at 3389. We are going to fix this so we can safely ignore this warning. The disks is fine for default. 127 gigs is more than enough for what we need. Now, because the Windows VM is going to be running without a public IP, which makes it slightly more secure, we are going to need to create a shared virtual network. So instead of this one, I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it Detonation VNet. And that all the defaults should be fine for that. We are not going to have a public IP for this, but the subnet is fine. Now we can accept all RDP from all IP addresses because we don't have anything that's exposed to the internet. One thing I do like is to delete the NIC when the VM is deleted. Just makes it a little bit nicer. Under management, we don't really need to make much changes. However, yeah, we don't need to make any changes here. So to go into monitoring. Monitoring is going to be another can of worms that is going to need to be set up. So we're going to worry about that later. And same with extensions. And I don't really care about tags. So now we wait for the Azure to validate this new VM. Everything looks good, so we're just going to hit create. That's going to set up a deployment, and we can wait for this to spin up. So all the resources but the virtual machine has been completed. It's just finished. Great, so there is our VM virtual machine. Before we do anything with it, we are going to create our Chasm virtual machine. It's going to be the same sort of rigmarole. I'm going to call it Chasm Workspace. We don't care too much about the zones. For the image, you can see I've got the image here, but to get it, you go see all images, and then in Marketplace, you search Chasm. Chasm Workspace is Community Edition. Down here, it's the first thing, Gen 2. For the size, 4 vCPUs and 16 gigs of memory seems okay. For the administrator account, we are not SSHing. We're not even going to use the password, but it forces you to set one anyway, so we're going to do it that way. We're going to ignore the deployment recommendation because we want our regions for all of our VMs to be the same. For the OS disk, 128 gigs is totally fine for all of this. The virtual network we're going to use is the same one. It's as the Flare VM. It's auto-populated, so that's awesome. For a public IP, we're going to need a public IP for this. That is how we are going to connect to it to begin with. We may make some changes to how we connect that down the road, but in this case, we'll just leave it. The security group, we'll keep it as default. We'll make some changes once it has been created. Management, there's nothing that we really care too much about. Monitoring is the same. Advanced is the same. Tags is the same. And now we can wait for the validation to run. Part of the validation will be pulling the terms and conditions for the image that we want to use, but we don't need to do anything else for that. We can just hit create. This will take some time to spin up the resources, so I will cut to it. Cool, we should now have Chasm Workspaces. We're going to click into it and we're going to make some changes to its network settings. We are first of all going to remove SSH because we don't need to do anything to the VM itself. We are going to create an inbound rule for HTTP. We've already got HTTPS. We're going to allow it and call it HTTP. One other thing we're going to do is we're going to set the source to my IP address. This helps restrict it a little bit more. Yes, there are things like IP spoofing but for now this is fine. Hit add, and then we're going to update the HTTPS port to the same, my IP address, and hit save. So that is all of the networking stuff that we need to do here. Now what we can do is we can go to connect, and then we can go to more ways to connect, and then we can open the serial console, and we can see that it is spinning up the connection to Chasm Workspace. Once that is done, what we can do is we can copy the IP, the public IP of the virtual machine, open a new tab, paste that in. It's not quite set up yet. This sets up a HTTPS connection with an untrusted certificate, so you may have some issues with connecting it to your browser, but in Firefox it seems to work. If you go to advanced and then proceed, and then you should see the Chasm Workspaces screen. The username for the administrator is admin@chasm.local, and the password is the name of your virtual machine, Chasm Workspace. So we are now presented with the dashboard. The first thing we want to do is we want to add the server. So if we go to infrastructure, servers, and then we hit add server, we can set it a friendly name. We're going to call it Flare VM. I'm going to set the default, the deployment zone to public. Everything else is default. The connection type is RDP. The IP is going to be the private IP of the virtual machine. So we go to network settings and we can find it in here. While we're here, we can check the port rules. There is a warning on this. This is okay, but if you are concerned, you can set this to your VNet's subnet range. I'm not going to do that for this, but you can if you want. Go back to Chasm. I'm going to set the IP to 10.0.0.4, and then we are using RDP on its default port 3389. So we'll use that for the connection port. For the credentials, we are going to use the RDP credentials of the virtual machine. So mine is YouTube, and my password is badly stored in Firefox, so I'm just going to use that. Maximum simultaneous sessions is going to be 1. Doesn't really matter. You can make this more. If you do make this number more, you are going to need to increase your resources, but I'm the only one using it, so 1 is fine. I'm going to hit save, and then inside of workspaces, we're going to create a workspace. This is where you launch all of your different apps. So add workspace. I want the workspace type to be the server. The friendly name is going to be Flare VM. The description is whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to call it Flare VPN. For server options, I'm going to use the Flare VM server option, and the RDP client is going to be web native client. This is the important one. If we used RDP local, it negates the whole point of using Chasm as a client. Everything else can stay blank, and we can hit save. Now if we go up to the top left, we can go to workspaces, and we should see our Flare VM there. When we click into it, you can choose between the current tab, a new tab, or a new window. I'm just going to click current tab and launch a session. This will take a few seconds for the virtual machine to render. It will log us in, and we can now start setting up our virtual machine. So this is the first page that you will be greeted with. It doesn't matter which diagnostic data you want to send. This is ephemeral anyway, so it is fine. This will then drop you into the desktop. We're not going to use Azure Arc, and we don't really need the server manager. In fact, what we can do is if we go to manage, server manager properties, and then we can click do not start server manager at logon, and so that will stop that app from opening. So now we are ready to install Flare VM. Before we want to do this, there's one more step that I want to take, and this is just in case the virtual machine gets corrupted. I don't want to have to go through the whole rigmarole of spinning up a completely new virtual machine and configuring it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the overview of the Flare VM virtual machine, and I'm going to capture an image. This will be the starting point of creating the golden image of this machine. A golden image, if you don't know, is a image that you will use for all of your deployments. So instead of having to spin everything up from scratch and install all of the software that you want, you can do that once. You then create a snapshot of that using an image, and then you can just use that image for deploying, and you just get access to everything. It's pretty cool. So the resource group is going to be detonation. The share v image is going to be as part of a gallery. This allows you to manage it, and I believe it allows it to capture more data, which is what we want. We do not want to delete the virtual machine because we're still using it. We want to create a new gallery. We're going to call this Flare VM, and then we are going to click specialized. We want to capture as much information as possible, so we don't have to set up anything essentially. The target VM definition is just going to be Flare VM, and everything else could be default. And then the version number, since this is the very first image, I'm going to go 0.0.1. Everything else looks fine. I'm going to hit create. Part of the creation is it is going to stop the virtual machine, so you will lose connection in here, but that's okay. If you just hit back, it'll take you back to here, and we can either leave this session running for auto connect, or we can just delete it. While it takes a minute to create this image, I can take you through Chasm. So this is Chasm Workspace. By default, it comes with 4 options: Chrome, Firefox, Terminal, and Ubuntu. These are all base installations that have been built as images by the people who run Chasm, and if you launch into one, it will create a Docker environment. Now, because we're running this on a not a very minimal, but a bit of a minimal server, it is going to take a hot second for this to spin up, and the latency is a bit bad, but that's what you get for virtualization. Obviously, if you give it more juice, more CPU, more RAM, it will be faster, but here we are. So the Ubuntu installation gives you access to a bunch of stuff out of the box, like Slack, GIMP, Ramina, Signal. So this allows you to do some really quick and simple work if you need Linux and a Linux machine, but for our purposes we want to have a fit for purpose image that we can just deploy. So sadly these are not really fit for purpose for us, but they are cool nonetheless. One thing that you could possibly do is run different types of malware directly in them just to see what happens, but you don't really have much visibility, so I wouldn't recommend it. Now that the virtual machine has been stopped, we should hopefully have the image created. What we can do now is just start it up again. This will take a minute or so we can keep track of that in the connect. Yeah, connect and then the serial console. It looks like it is connected and started up, so we can now try connect to the virtual machine inside of Chasm. Here we are. So now we can start on the prerequisites of installing Flare VM. Windows Defender interferes with a lot of the installation process, so there are things documented in the pre-installation that we should do, like disable Windows updates. So what we're going to do is go into Defender. So in the search bar, we'll just search Defender, and then we want to find virus and threat protection, just right there. And then virus and threat protection settings, and turn everything off. Cool. The next thing we want to do is go into the group policy and do the same. So that is going to be in administrative templates, Windows components, Microsoft Defender antivirus, and then turn off Microsoft Defender antivirus. And then we want to enable that. We now want to go and turn off Windows updates, advanced Windows update options, and that has already been turned off. Awesome. Just looking back at the docs, it looks like it is. We have done everything. Windows update, tamper protection, anti-malware. Yeah. Cool. So the next thing we can do is launch a terminal in administrator, and now we can run the command. So we'll copy this first thing. This downloads the installer. Make sure you are running a PowerShell. Now, if you were to try and paste directly in here, it's not going to work. The way that Chasm works is we have a clipboard section. So this is what we do to transfer the clipboard. This makes it a tiny bit safer, so in case any malware that you detonate is not going to get pushed to your clipboard. So it's the first command. Second command is unblock file. Do the same thing. Ooh, yes. So yeah, so we need put it in the desktop. So we'll cd to our desktop, and then we'll run the file again. Unblock the file. We will set the execution policy to unrestricted and as force. Ooh. And then we can finally run install. Now, it does recommend to use your password. We probably don't need to because we don't have password authentication for administrative access because we are admins. So we are not going to do that. In fact, I can just type that in. And this will run. One thing I like to do is run this as detached. Now, this installation process will take many hours to complete. So I am not going to sit through this, and you are not expected to sit through this. It is 10 o'clock PM, so I am... Ooh, it looks like I can't ping Google. That's fine. One thing we probably have forgotten is to disable the firewall. So we'll go to Windows Defender Firewall. And we're going to turn off Windows Defender Firewall. And hopefully it's not going to kick us out. Cool. Now we'll try that again. In fact, we can try and ping Google ourselves. And that's not happy. Now, the reason why this could be happening is because we haven't set a public IP, but I don't think that should make much of a difference. Okay, so I figured out what the cause of it was. It turns out we need a public IP address on this box for the installation process because of how ICMP works. So what I did was to enable that, we need to do a couple things. So first of all, we need to go to the virtual machine. We then go to network settings, and we make sure that we set RDP, the IP of the RDP, to the IP of the Chasm workspace. This protects the virtual machine from anybody randomly RDP into it. So we want to fix that. And then we want to assign a public IP, which for some reason is not actually showing up in this. There it is. So the way to do that is you go to your network interface, you go to ipconfig 1, and then you check this box, and you hit create a public IP address, and it will create a new one for you. I am not going to do that because I have already done it. Once that is set, it will take a couple minutes to, it should be instant, but it may take a couple minutes for it to kick through. Running curl ifconfig.me did make it show up faster. You can ignore that Internet Explorer warning, and you should actually see the IP and the response object in here, but I can go all.json. It will give you a better thing. There you go. So there's your IP address, or my IP address. So once that has been set, we can then run the install script. Now I have added the password just for safety. But as we run that, it will go through and check all of the prereqs. So you can see we've got a valid PowerShell, running as admin, unrestricted execution policy, valid Windows version, tested Windows version, running inside a VM, good username, enough disk space, internet, and Defender disabled. And now you can click this checkbox that I have taken a VM snapshot to ensure that I can revert to the pre-installation state. Now you can do this if you want, if you don't want to have to go back through all of the disabling. It's the same process. You just go overview. Nope, we're on the wrong thing. Virtual machines, Flare VM, capture image. This is probably not the actual use case for this, but because we are creating a golden image, it's fine. And then we just hit continue. And so there will be a few prompts that pop up in this. Sadly, it doesn't seem like there is a fully unprompted, maybe there is with no weights, but you can try with no weight and no GUI. Your mileage may vary, but this will now go through and install all of the applications. So this is Chocolatey, Hyper-V, WinConfig, Ghidra. Yeah, there are a lot of different applications. The documentation doesn't seem to tell you all of them. Oh, yeah, there you go. So you can look in the config and you can see these will be all of the packages that gets installed. So as you can see, it's quite a lot. Plus a bunch of other changes. So I'm just going to keep clicking the default, and all the default stuff is going to be acceptable for me. Click through all of them. This is the list of all of the programs, and I will leave this running, and I shall see you guys back after this installation is finished. One thing to mention with this installation is you will be kicked out of your RDP session at times for multiple reasons. It does does restart the operating system a few times, and part of that does kick it out, and other parts of it does seem to just kick you out of RDP for some reason. Don't be too worried. It still all runs automatically under the hood, so you shouldn't have that much to worry about. And we're back. We have completed the installation. We can see that the desktop background has changed, and we have a whole bunch of new tools. Things like CyberChef, Ghidra. If you go into the search bar, those are two of my favorite tools. I can walk through how to use these at a later date. Terminal, Notepad++, all the other good tools. I am now going to snapshot this, remove the public IP because now it's not needed, and create an image from this that we can then use to deploy. One thing that I want to do after creating the new image is install WSL on it. I personally find it easier to use for command line utilities, so I will be doing that as well. But yeah, we can do that in another video. As you can see, the public IP has been removed. You just uncheck the associate public IP address, and now we should not have a public IP connected. The other thing we can do is go back into the RDP inbound rule and set this back to any address, since now we're just pulling from the subnet. At a later video we can look at making it only allow IPs within the subnet, but this is fine. The last thing to do is to create a new image. So it's the same process as before. We are going to use the specialized. We're going to use the same stuff, and we have created a new image for FlareVM. It is in the process of turning off the virtual machine, and then it will create the image, and we should have everything ready to go to stand up disposable virtual machines. And now we have our FlareVM image version 0.1.0. This is what we're going to build out any updates we want. So my 0.1.1 is probably just going to be WSL, and yeah, next time we will focus on doing that. Hope you guys found this video interesting and or useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.